In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use local models in Claude Code. I just used Claude Code to create this real-time weather app. This app calls an API to fetch real, accurate information from the web, so I can enter any city in the world, and it will retrieve up-to-date weather information for that city, along with all of these beautiful little animations. Now here's the kicker. This is completely free. No need for any subscriptions or API costs. And these models are running locally on my own machine, which I can use for unlimited times, and it's completely secure and offline. In fact, if you have a look at the CLI, you will notice that I'm actually using Qwen3 Coder and not Sonnet, Opus, or Haiku. And because we're running in the Claude Code CLI tool, these agents have access to all of the features available in Claude Code, like slash commands, skills, MCP servers, sub-agents, you name it. We can also switch between edit mode and plan modes as well. Everything just works. And yes, this is running on consumer-grade hardware. The first thing we need to do is to download models onto our machine. For this, we will be using Ollama. If you're new to Ollama, it's a fantastic tool for running large language models on your own machine. So go over to ollama.com, then click on download, and then download and install Ollama. Afterwards, you can verify that Ollama is actually working by opening up your terminal or command prompt and running the command Ollama. You should receive something like this, where it shows you all of these available commands. And if you run Ollama list, it will show you all of the available models on your machine. If this is your first time using Ollama, you won't see any models at this stage. So how do you download models then? Again, on the Ollama website, simply go to Models, and now you have different models for different purposes. For Claude Code, if we actually go to the Ollama website and click on Claude Code, we can go down to Recommended Models, and Ollama themselves actually recommend Qwen3 Coder, GLM 4.7, this is actually GLM 4.7 Flash by the way, and the GPT OSS series of models from OpenAI. So let's go back to Models. Here's my recommendation based on your system specs. Let's go to GPT OSS. The smallest model out of all of these is the GPT OSS 20 billion parameter model. You only need about 14 gig of VRAM, and in fact this number is misleading due to the architecture of the model. You can get away with running this on way less VRAM. Then if your hardware can handle it, I actually recommend using Qwen3 Coder, this 19 gig model over here. Then it's also worth mentioning that the GLM 4.7 Flash model was recently added to Ollama as well. Just like the Qwen3 model, this is also a 30 billion parameter model. And this also clocks in at about 19 gig, just like Qwen3. Now this is just my opinion, but I feel like I actually got better results from Qwen3 compared to GLM 4.7 Flash. If you've got a more capable graphics card, you can definitely go for GLM 4.7 Flash, the Q8 quantized version. This requires about 32 gig of VRAM. So at this point, you probably need something like an RTX 5090 to run this model. And if you don't mind a little bit of offloading and slower responses, you can definitely go for GPT OSS, the 120 billion parameter model, which is the largest out of all of these. So once you've selected a model, all you have to do is copy the name of the model, then back in your terminal, simply run Ollama, pool, and then paste in that model name. And after downloading the model, we can run Ollama list, and you should now see the model in this list. Cool, we can now close the terminal, and we should now be able to use these models in Claude Code. So how do you install Claude Code then? Well, from the Ollama website, simply scroll down to Claude Code. Then from this page, we can go down to the install section, and then depending on your operating system, simply copy this command and simply run that command in your terminal. This will now download and install the latest version of Claude Code. So now that we have the model downloaded and we've got Ollama up and running, all we have to do now is start Claude Code and use these models. But there's a catch. If you try to use Claude normally by running the Claude command, you will be taken to the setup instructions, and you will be asked to sign in with either your Claude Code subscription or your Anthropic API key. So I'm actually going to press Ctrl+C to exit out of this. And there's actually a special way to start Claude Code using Ollama. What you have to enter is Ollama launch Claude. Optionally, you can add --config to kind of reset the setup process. So I'm just going to run it without the config flag. Then let's select our theme. We can press enter, and you will notice it didn't ask us to sign in with our subscription or provide an API key. We can simply press enter. We can use the recommended settings, and that's really it. Now we have access to Claude Code, and we are using an open source model that's running securely on our own machines. Now, what happens if you download additional models and you want the option to select between the different models? Now, since we've already run that setup process, this command actually won't ask us again what model to select. It will simply default to the previous selected model. So in order to go through the setup process again, we simply have to add this --config flag. And now we have an opportunity to select one of those models. So let's go with GPT OSS, the 20 billion parameter model, just to keep things interesting. Let's see if everything works by saying, hey, and look at that, we get our response back. And just to prove to you that we're not running any Claude models behind the scenes, I'll start the Claude command, and you'll see this error message, missing API key, and that's because I'm currently signed out of my Anthropic account. So this is indeed completely running offline, and we can still go into planning mode and change mode. We can create sub-agents, we can hook up custom commands, and everything else. Hey, please can you describe this code base? And let's send this. So while this is running, I do want to mention that these models will never compete with the likes of Opus and Sonnet 4.5. It's just unreasonable to assume that you can run something of that caliber on your local hardware. But these local models are perfect if you're starting out with agentic coding and vibe coding, and you might not have the means to pay for these expensive services. And it doesn't mean that these models are useless either. You can definitely use them to make quick little edits in your code base. And as you can see, GPT OSS was perfectly fine with describing this application. If you run into any issues using these models, what I recommend you do is simply go to this Claude Code documentation on the Ollama website, copy this page, and then pass it to a more intelligent model like one of the Claude models or ChatGPT. It really doesn't matter. Just pass in this documentation and explain the issue that you're having. For example, while I was preparing for this video, I kept getting these 404 error messages in the terminal. So it effectively said that it couldn't find the model. Or when I tried to download one of these models, I believe it was the GLM 4.7 Flash model, Ollama said it couldn't download the model because I don't have the correct version of Ollama installed. So I found that by passing in the content of this page to a more intelligent model, it was able to resolve all of its issues for me. Another important factor between deciding on the different models is the model's context window size. As you might know, these coding agents can use a lot of context. So something to take note is the GLM 4.7 model has a context window size of 198k tokens. This is similar to the 200,000 token limit in Claude Code. When you get close to reaching this limit, the conversation will be summarized or compacted. So the GLM model does fit nicely into that context window limit. The Qwen3 Coder model actually supports up to 256,000 tokens. This means the 200,000 token limit in Claude Code doesn't come close to the limit of this model, whereas the GPT OSS models only have a context window of 128,000 tokens. This means in Claude Code you'll see the quality of the responses degrade when using about 50% of this maximum context window size. And that's why the Qwen3 Coder model is basically my favorite model at this point in time. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more Claude Code tips and tricks. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.